Welcome to Hydrogen Rising, a bi-weekly podcast created and hosted by the global law firm K&L Gates that brings you analysis of critical, cutting-edge issues impacting the global hydrogen market. We look forward to your engagement and feedback. And of course, don't hesitate to reach out if you have ideas about new topics you'd like us to cover.
Greetings, Hydrogen Rising listeners. Glad to have everyone back with us for our next episode. My name is David Walkner, a partner in the global law firm K&L Gates and co-leader of the firm's hydrogen practice. I am, of course, here today with my host, Sandra Safro, who's the Associate General Counsel for Energy and Technology Regulation at the Edison Electric Institute here in DC. Sandy, hello and welcome back. Nice to see you.
Hey, David. Good to see you too. Good to be here with you today.
Yeah. So before we kick into today's episode, I think you've got an exciting announcement about an upcoming Women in Hydrogen event that I expect our listeners would love to hear about.
I do. Thank you for giving me the forum to do that, David. I appreciate it. So I think we may have mentioned on this program before that I had started a women's hydrogen networking group, a very informal group, about 2 years ago with one of our guest colleagues, actually, a woman named Martina Steinkutz, who is at the Renewable Hydrogen Alliance, which gives you a little bit of a sense of who we're talking to today. And last year, we decided to do a virtual event for International Women's Day, which for those who are not aware is on March 8th this year. And our event this year, as last year, features all female panelists. It's an event by women, for women, and we are inviting male allies to join us as well. The event will take place from noon to 2:30 p.m. on March 8th, that's Eastern Standard Time. And we'll have 2 fireside chat panels, one with a very senior woman in the hydrogen industry. I'm trying to be a little bit coy because we haven't released all the details on our speakers yet, but she's very prominent in the aviation sector. And then a name from the U.S. government who will be quite familiar to many of our listeners as well. And then we'll have 2 concurrent panels and a networking session. So if folks are interested, please reach out to me over LinkedIn. You can find me just by searching my name. Just send me a note, and I'm happy to send through information on how you can join. Thanks, David, again, for giving me the opportunity to talk about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's absolutely fantastic what you and Martina have built around that. And I know not just local here in the US, but really a global network of women who are doing amazing things in the hydrogen industry. So congrats on that. And I will not give any more spoilers on your guests, by the way. So we've got an exciting episode today. And as Sandy kind of dropped a hint, we are joined today by Michelle Detwiler, who is the Executive Director of the Renewable Hydrogen Alliance, or RHA, based in Portland, Oregon. K&L Gates is very pleased to be a member of the Renewable Hydrogen Alliance and enjoy very much opportunity to work with Michelle, the team at RHA, and the other members in advancing renewable clean hydrogen. So, Michelle, welcome to Hydrogen Rising. We are thrilled to have you.
I am thrilled to be here. Thank you, David and Sandy. It's very nice to be here today.
Excellent. Well, so, let's just kind of get down to basics. I'd say kind of first thing, tell our audience a bit about the Renewable Hydrogen Alliance, the mission of the organization, who your members are and areas of engagement for you guys.
Well, the Renewable Hydrogen Alliance is a nonprofit trade association based in Portland, Oregon, as you mentioned. Our scope is really the Pacific Northwest. Our mission is to promote the use of renewable energy to produce hydrogen and other derivative fuels. So, ammonia, green ammonia, formic acid, whatever you can make out of hydrogen. And we advocate and we educate and we do outreach. We have a very diverse membership. We have about 75 or so members, and they really cover the full spectrum of the hydrogen value chain, which is everybody from equipment manufacturers to vehicle manufacturers, public transit agencies, utilities, project developers, clean energy and transportation advocacy groups, etc.
That's great. The breadth of the membership has struck me, and I think incredibly useful. And we'll get to some DOE related issues later, but I do think, particularly now that DOE has released that matchmaker tool for hydrogen online, I mean, you guys are already doing that through your membership. You're bringing together really the various pieces of the value chain. I think that's great. So one of the things that has been interesting to me in working with you all at RHA, there's folks out in there that think, oh, hydrogen is brand new. And we have lots of conversations with people who are learning kind of stage one, if you will. In fact, just the other day, I saw from an investment fund focused on hydrogen, a new publication called The Bluffer's Guide to Hydrogen.
Oh, yeah,
and it's actually, I mean, it's very well done. And I was impressed. It's good foundational information. But in any event, it's obviously not new, as we've talked about. RHA, I think, has an interesting origin story in this day and age of origin stories and kind of interesting roots. So Sandy and I frequently will ask our guests, why now, right? Why is, if we're talking to a private sector company, like why is your company engaging on this issue now? For RHA, why now? I mean, you guys have been around for a few years now, and what's the motivation? Kind of tell us a little bit about that origin story.
Sure. So the organization was founded by a gentleman by the name of Ken Dragoon. And he's an engineer. He had worked in the energy industry, particularly for the Bonneville Power Administration out here for a long time. And, he was asked to write a paper for a utility on power to fuels. So he discovered by doing some research in Europe how the Europeans were sort of looking at hydrogen, particularly in respect to absorbing some excess renewable energy. And he thought, well, that's a great idea. Why don't we do that in the United States? And when he started talking to utilities and other stakeholders in the States, he found that really nobody was talking about it. And nobody really knew that much about it. And in the Pacific Northwest, we are just blessed with an abundance of renewable energy, and frankly, due to lots of very progressive climate-related policy, a grid that's getting cleaner and cleaner. But also a grid that, simply because it has a lot of renewables on it, has that intermittency, that variability. So a lot of that energy, unfortunately, can go to waste. So what's new about using hydrogen in that way is sort of the whole electrolyzer technology, right? You can take that excess renewable energy and you can feed it through the electrolyzer and make hydrogen with it. The other thing is, I think that there is a growing recognition and certainly growing evidence and political will around recognizing that climate change is real and that we are going to need every single possible tool we can get our hands on to address it. And I think that even maybe 4 or 5 years ago, as just generally as a society, Jane Citizen wasn't thinking about climate change so much. But now, if she lives in California and she's having to pull her kids out of school because the air quality is so poor because there are wildfires 5 miles away, suddenly it's all beginning to make it so real. So, as you all know, hydrogen is a great, solution in many respects to decarbonizing several different sectors. And again, as we hopefully transition more and more of the country to the usage and production of renewable energy, we'll have excess renewable energy to pull off the system. And that's one way to make clean hydrogen.
That's great. I think those points about kind of real life impacts are particularly striking, and as we all know, are getting more and more serious, each passing year.
Michelle, I think you touched on this a bit in your comments already, but I'd be curious, with your focus on the Pacific Northwest, where RHA thinks it can be the most effective. Is it with respect to public education, which is incredibly important in any sector of the energy economy, but particularly for areas that are emerging? Is it legislative activity, of which we have seen quite a bit, as we were talking about before we started this recording? Or is it perhaps in helping to craft practices as the industry develops, or maybe it's all of the above and something else?
Well, I hope that RHA is effective, particularly for our members' sake. I hope we are effective in all of those areas. But I think where we have managed to kind of point to the most momentum is on the legislative front. I mean, first of all, I've been in government relations for 20 years, and I like those conversations that you have with a legislator, and you're describing what you do, you're describing why it's important, and suddenly you can see that the light goes on, the aha moment, so to speak. But we have had remarkable success, particularly in the state of Washington, of making sure that renewable hydrogen is a piece of every single climate change policy in the state. And now Washington, Oregon, and California all have the trifecta of climate policy: 100% clean, low carbon fuel standards, and cap and invest, or cap and trade. So at least in Washington, renewable hydrogen is a piece of all of that. So, if you need to comply with, if you're a utility and you need to comply with some standard, you can make hydrogen and that's a compliance pathway. So that I think is really, really, really important. And then just educating stakeholders, other stakeholders besides legislators. And also, as you mentioned earlier, Sandy, my colleague, Martina, who I just absolutely have to give a shout out to. She is our director of market development, and she can connect our members to whatever opportunity, whatever answer to a question they might have. We are just constantly putting people in touch with each other who need to be in touch. And you mentioned the matchmaker tool. Martina made a map of announced public Pacific Northwest renewable hydrogen projects up and down the West Coast before DOE did.
Yeah, that's awesome. I actually wasn't aware of that. Shout out to DOE and the HFTO, the Hydrogen Fuel Cell Technologies Office. I mean, the work they're doing is stellar. Dr. Satchapal is just a leader, and we should all be very grateful for the work she has done. But private sector does frequently lead on issues, right? And so I think my sense is there's a real opportunity for collaboration here, and DOE is open to collaboration.
Yes, absolutely. And it's almost, when this organization was founded, there was very, very little, it's the middle of the Trump administration, there was very, very little activity with regard to clean energy or hydrogen or finding alternatives, whatever, to fossil energy, whatever. And now suddenly that has just shifted 180 degrees, and we do not lobby on the federal level, but we want to provide a service to our members that they know all the activity that's happening at the federal level, and there is a lot of it.
Yes.
I just literally sent an email out today saying, hey, here's our comments on the hydrogen strategy, and here's, some more information from a White House fact sheet, and, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a lot. It's a fire hose, as I call it.
Maybe sticking with that federal theme, it would be interesting to talk to you about the Department of Energy's efforts to expand hydrogen development in the U.S. We've talked in prior episodes about the recently passed bipartisan infrastructure law, and I think we might have also referred to it by one of its other names, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which appropriates billions of dollars for the development of hydrogen. As DOE moves forward with both the Hydrogen Hub and its electrolyzer R&D program, be curious what you see as the most beneficial to RHA and its members, and maybe saying it in a little bit of a different way, what's kind of on RHA's wish list with regard to DOE's approach to those two efforts?
Well, certainly, it's a recognition by DOE that this is a region that is just primed for development of, clean hydrogen from renewable resources, as I think might be how it's characterized in the BIL. But and we have great infrastructure resources. We have great renewable energy resources. We have ports. We have aviation. I mean, we have this is where Boeing airplanes are made. So I think we just have a lot to contribute and a lot that would be really helpful to accelerating production, distribution, and end use. And then, nearby the region, there is the Delta Utah project that your listeners may be familiar with. All that can be interconnected, through the Pacific Northwest, the Intermountain West, et cetera. There's just a lot going on. So I would like us to be recognized as the place where a hub should go for for hydrogen from renewable energy.
There's a lot of competition, is my sense. I feel like every day I hear about a new city or region or band of states that are thinking about, applying once the solicitation issues from DOE that are going to try to to apply for a grant. So DOE is, I expect, going to see some pretty exciting proposals. So maybe kind of in wrapping up, you've highlighted kind of at a high level some of the advancements, if you will, in the Pacific Northwest and California, Washington, Oregon, California in particular. Are there, I guess maybe drilling down a little bit, are there kind of significant state, either legislative or regulatory initiatives that are underway right now that are particularly helpful, that perhaps, are going to work hand in glove with DOE's efforts? Or, I don't think we don't frequently enough get detail, I think, on state level programs. So where do you see kind of opportunities in your area?
Well, right now at the Washington legislature, we have 5 or 6 initiatives that we are pushing, and they're all sort of related to, of course, where a lot of industry players think is one of the most important places to start, which is tax incentives. How do we get that cost down so that we can then go forward and produce? So 3 years ago, we managed to get a definition in Washington law of renewable hydrogen. We're now moving forward with expanding that definition a little bit to green electrolytic hydrogen, which is based on what is currently in California statute, just to expand those tax exemptions and favorable treatment that we've already gotten for quote unquote renewable hydrogen. In addition, we are also in that, I believe in that same legislation, we're extending authority for municipal utilities, and I hope this doesn't get down too much in the weeds, extending authority for municipal utilities to produce and sell hydrogen. So what kicked off a project in Wenatchee, Washington, was the state giving public utilities the authority to produce and sell hydrogen. Public utilities, as you both probably know, can be pretty constricted in what they can do with their customers' money. So now municipal utilities will get that same authority. So, Seattle City Light and Tacoma Power and other city utilities. So that's good movement there. And we are seeing, as you see in many places, we're seeing just unanimous support for these things. I mean, we had a bill move out of we have bills move out of committee with, unanimous aye votes all the time. So that's really fun.
For me and Sandy, who live in the other Washington, D.C., the notion of unanimous votes coming out of committee is a very foreign concept.
I don't know if that's happened in the recent past. So.
Yeah, that's exciting. I mean, the munis thing, and that strikes me. I mean, those are the kinds of creative changes we need to be making, right? I mean, we can talk big picture about, is there one federal permitting regime if you want to build an interstate hydrogen pipeline? But at kind of a fundamental user level, a local level, to allow for, in this case, municipalities to actually, be in a position to produce and sell hydrogen, I think that's brilliant. And does Oregon, are there kind of similar things moving through Oregon, or where does Oregon stand?
We wish. We're working hard. What we did manage, we went for a tax exemption in the 2021 session and were unsuccessful, but we did out of that get a renewable hydrogen studies. So the state energy department is now looking at barriers and advantages to standing up a hydrogen economy. In Oregon, another thing they did was they passed an offshore wind study that actually, in the intent language of the bill, noted a 500 megawatt electrolyzer onshore to take power from offshore wind, because Oregon has been identified in their state goals as having 3 gigawatts of offshore wind capability, which they and actually the call centers or the call areas will be issued sometime by the end of this month. So that's like, oil and gas lease areas for the offshore wind. So we're pretty excited about that.
That's cool, right? I mean, that's the way we need to be thinking about these opportunities.
Also, little things at the state level, we have ZEV sale requirements, right? Dealers will have to sell a certain number of zero emission vehicles by a certain date. So we go in and we make sure, what's the cap? So for instance, if purchasers can get a rebate from the state for buying a zero emission vehicle, is the MSRP too low to enable them to buy a fuel cell vehicle, which can tend to be a little bit more expensive than a standard battery electric vehicle? So, let's go in and tweak that. So that's the kind of stuff we do.
That's fantastic. I don't know that I've got any other questions, and happy to wrap up. Sandy, anything on your end?
No, I think this has been really helpful, Michelle, in understanding how RHA is thinking about the hydrogen economy, and particularly in a region of the country. And I use the word region with a little bit of hesitance because I know it's a very, a very charged word these days with the DOE hydrogen hubs, RFI out, and the FOA on the horizon. But really, really appreciated your thoughts today.
Well, thank you. It was great to be here.
Yeah, thanks to Michelle Detwiler, Executive Director of the Renewable Hydrogen Alliance, for joining us on Hydrogen Rising today. And of course, thank you to all of our listeners. Don't forget to check out past episodes of Hydrogen Rising, both from season 1 and now here in season 2, and as well, the K&L Gates market-leading publication, The Hydrogen Handbook, which is available at klgates.com/hydrogen. If you have any questions for either me or Sandy, or for Michelle Detwiler at the Renewable Hydrogen Alliance, I am sure Michelle would love to hear from you. But Michelle, what is the web address for the Alliance?
Renewable-H2, the digit 2.org.
Awesome. Renewable-H2.org. So all of our listeners, go check them out. And in the meantime, stay tuned for the next episode of Hydrogen Rising. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Hydrogen Rising. Be sure to subscribe to receive timely notifications of future episodes, and check out our market-leading publication, The Hydrogen Handbook, on our website at www.klgates.com.